Crash. The sound of my coffee mug hitting the floor was nothing compared to the rage boiling in my chest. I'm Jake, a regular guy living in a quiet suburban neighborhood called Willow Creek, where manicured lawns and picket fences hide a battlefield of petty drama. This morning I yanked open my front door to find a screaming yellow Lamborghini parked dead center across my driveway, blocking my beat-up pickup truck like it was holding it hostage. This wasn't just any Corvette belonged to Karen, the HOA president who'd been making my life hell for years. Her Lambo wasn't just a car. It was a flex, a shiny middle finger to everyone on our street. And today, she'd aimed it right at me. I stood there, barefoot on my porch, staring at the audacity of this woman. Karen had been the bane of Willow Creek since she moved in 3 years ago, strutting around like she owned the place. She was the kind of person who'd measure your mailbox height with a ruler and fine you if it was off by a centimeter. She'd once slapped me with a $200 fine because my grass was too tall. By half an inch on a day, it was raining, so I couldn't mow. Another time, she had my buddy's old Honda towed from the street because it lowered property values. Her HOA rulebook was thicker than a phone book, and she wielded it like a dictator. But blocking my driveway? This was a new low, even for her. I stormed down the steps, my heart pounding like a war drum. The Lambo gleamed under the morning sun, its sleek curves taunting me. I could see my reflection in its waxed, hood-red-faced flannel shirt half-tucked, looking like a man on the edge. I banged on Karen's front door, which was just across the street, its gaudy gold knocker shaped like a lion's head. No answer. I knocked harder, the sound echoing through the quiet cul-de-sac. Finally, the door swung open, and there she was, Karen, in all her glory. She wore a neon pink tracksuit, her blonde hair pulled into a high ponytail so tight it looked like it was giving her a facelift.
What?
Her designer sunglasses perched on her head, and she twirled her Lambo keys like a villain in a bad movie. Your car, Karen? I shouted, pointing at the yellow monstrosity. My voice cracked with frustration, loud enough to make a neighbor's dog start barking. Karen leaned against her doorframe, smirking like she'd just won the lottery. My street, Jake, she drawled, her voice dripping with condescension. I park where I want. Deal with it. I blinked, stunned by her nerve. Your street? I need to get to work, Karen. Move it now. I took a step toward her, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she crossed her arms, her fake nails glinting like talons. You're lucky I don't fine you for that eyesore of a truck, she snapped, gesturing at my rusty Ford. It's a disgrace to Willow Creek. My fists clenched so hard my knuckles turned white. This wasn't just about the Lambo, it was personal. Karen had been gunning for me ever since I moved in 5 years ago. I'm a mechanic who restores old vehicles, and my garage is my sanctuary. But to Karen, it was a violation of her precious HOA aesthetic. She'd left passive-aggressive notes on my door about my junkyard, and once tried to ban me from parking my work van in my own driveway. I'd kept my cool for years, biting my tongue to avoid her wrath. But today, she'd crossed the line. I glanced back at my driveway, where my truck sat trapped. I had a big job at the shop today, fixing a client's vintage Mustang, and being late could cost me thousands. I tried one more time to reason with her. Karen, I'm asking nicely. Move the car or I'll call a tow truck. Her smirk widened into a full-blown grin. Go ahead, Jake. My husband's golf buddies with the mayor. Good luck. That's when I saw the glint of pure malice in her eyes. She wasn't just blocking my driveway. She was baiting me, daring me to lose my cool. Neighbors started peeking out their windows, their curtains twitching like they were watching a soap opera. Old Mr. Henderson across the street shook his head, too scared of Karen to get involved. I could feel the whole street holding its breath, waiting for my next move. My mind raced. I could call the cops, but Karen's connections made that a gamble. I could try to push the Lambo myself, but I'd probably end up in handcuffs for vandalism. Then it hit me, a crazy, reckless idea that made my pulse spike. In my garage, under a dusty tarp, was my secret weapon, a 20-ton armored tank. I'd been restoring for years. It was a beast, a relic from the Cold War era, with tracks that could crush concrete and an engine that roared like a dragon. I'd bought it as a passion project, spending every spare dime to make it run. It was street legal barely, and I'd kept it hidden to avoid Karen's HOA Gestapo. I looked at her smug face, then back at the Lambo. A grin crept across my lips. "You know what, Karen?" I said, my voice low and steady. "You're right, I'll deal with it." I turned and marched back toward my house, my boots crunching on the gravel. Karen laughed behind me, thinking she'd won. But she had no idea what was coming. This wasn't just about my driveway anymore. It was about every fine, every threat, every time she'd bullied this neighborhood into submission. Today, Karen was going to learn a lesson she'd never forget. Karen wasn't just annoying. She was a full-blown dictator in a tracksuit. For 3 years, she'd ruled Willow Creek's HOA like a queen on a throne of complaint forms. Her rulebook was a Bible of nonsense. No basketball hoops, no holiday lights past January 5th, no unsightly vehicles. She'd once fined Mrs. Carter, a sweet 80-year-old widow, $1.50 because her rose bushes were too red and clashed with the neighborhood's neutral palette. Nobody dared cross her knot after she got the Thompson's dog declared a nuisance and forced them to rehome it. Karen's husband, a slick lawyer who golfed with the mayor, gave her untouchable status. She wasn't just enforcing rules. She was waging a one-woman war to mold Willow Creek into her personal kingdom. For me, the trouble started when I moved in 5 years ago. I'm a gearhead who restores old military vehicles in my garage. It's my passion, my escape after long days at the shop fixing cars. My latest project, 20-ton armored tank, a Cold War relic I'd been rebuilding for years. It was street legal barely, with tracks that could crush concrete and an engine that roared like a freight train. I kept it hidden under a tarp to avoid Karen's wrath, but she'd sniffed it out. For months, she'd been leaving notes on my door. Remove unsightly junk from premises or unapproved structures violate HOA code. She'd even sent a drone over my backyard to snoop, claiming she was inspecting for violations. I'd ignored her, hoping she'd move. On to another victim. Big mistake. That morning, as I stood in the street arguing about her Lambo, Karen took it to a new level. "You're a blight on this neighborhood, Jake." She spat, her voice loud enough for the whole cul-de-sac to hear. "That junkyard garage of yours is dragging down property values?" Clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. "My garage is my business, Karen. Just move your car." Her eyes gleamed with malice, like a shark smelling blood. She pulled out her phone and started filming me, holding it up like a weapon. "Smile, Jake. This is going on the HOA Facebook page," she cackled. "You're done in this neighborhood." My stomach churned. The HOA Facebook page was Karen's propaganda machine, where she shamed residents for minor infractions, crooked shutters, overgrown hedges, kids' bikes left out. Last month, she'd posted a photo of Mr. Henderson's trash can left curbside, an hour past pickup, calling him a slob.
Oh.
She was gunning for me, and I knew this video would be edited to make me look like the bad guy. Neighbors watched from their windows, their curtains twitching. Old Mr. Henderson shook his head, his face pale. Even Rusty, my loyal mutt, growled from the porch, sensing the tension. I took a deep breath, trying one last time to reason. "Karen, I have a big job today. I'm begging you move the Lambo." A response. She sauntered to her car, climbed in, and double-parked it, now blocking my neighbor's driveway too. The engine revved, a smug roar that echoed her laugh. "Psh," she said, stepping out and locking the car with a chirp. "Guess I'm staying put," the crowd gasped. Mrs. Carter, watching from her porch, clutched her cardigan. Kid on a bike stopped cold, his eyes wide. Karen's stunt wasn't just about me anymore. It was a power flex for the whole street to see. She was daring anyone to challenge her, knowing her connections made her bulletproof. My vision blurred with rage. I'd spent years keeping my head down, paying her fines, swallowing her insults. But this was war. I thought about my tank hidden in the garage. It was a crazy idea, insane. Even but the thought of Karen's smug face crumpling made my heart race. She'd bullied this neighborhood for too long, and I wasn't just fighting for my driveway. I was fighting for Mrs. Carter's roses, Mr. Henderson's trash can, the Thompson's dog. and every resident she'd terrorized. I met Karen's gaze, my voice low and steady. "You're gonna regret this," she laughed, thinking she'd won. She had no idea what was coming. My boots pounded the pavement as I stormed back to my house, my heart hammering like a piston. Karen's laugh echoed behind me, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. I'd had enough of her fines, her threats, her smug face. This wasn't just about my driveway anymore. It was about taking back Willow Creek from her reign of terror. I had the perfect weapon to do it. I flung open my garage door, the hinges creaking like a war cry. There under a dusty tarp was my pride and joy, a 20-ton armored tank. A Cold War relic I'd spent 5 years and every spare dime restoring. It was a beast of green steel, tracks wider than my shoulders, and a turret that could make a grown man cry. I'd bought it at a surplus auction, a rusted hulk most people would have scrapped, but I saw potential. Nights and weekends, I'd rebuilt its engine, rewired its controls, and polished its armor until it gleamed like a museum piece. It was street legal barely. With a permit I'd fought the DMV for months to get. I'd kept it hidden to avoid Karen's HOA nonsense. But today, it was showtime. I grabbed the tarp and yanked it off, the fabric billowing like a cape. The tank loomed in the dim garage light, its tracks glinting with menace. My dog, Rusty, a scruffy mutt who'd seen every bolt I'd tightened, barked. In excitement, his tail wagging like a metronome. "You ready, boy?" I muttered, patting his head. I climbed onto the tank's hull, my boots clanging against the steel. The driver's hatch creaked as I slid inside, the smell of oil and metal filling my nose. The cockpit was cramped, all levers and gauges, but it felt like home. I flicked the ignition switch, and the engine sputtered, then roared to life a deep, guttural growl that shook the garage walls. The ground trembled, and Rusty howled in approval. I grabbed my phone, propped it on the dashboard, and hit record. "This is for YouTube, Karen," I growled, my voice barely audible over the engine. I wanted the world to see this. Every neighbor she'd bullied, every fine she'd slapped me with, every smirk she'd thrown my way. I eased the throttle forward and the tank lurched, its tracks chewing the concrete floor. The garage door rattled as I rolled toward it, the tank's weight making the ground quake. I hit the remote, and the door groaned open, sunlight flooding. And like a spotlight, as the tank emerged, Willow Creek went silent. Karen, still by her Lambo, froze mid-taunt, her phone slipping in her hand. Her smug grin vanished, replaced by wide-eyed panic. "What the hell is that?" she screeched, her voice cracking like glass. The Lambo, so sleek and arrogant minutes ago, looked like a toy next to my steel giant. Neighbors gaped from their lawns. Mr. Henderson dropped his rake. Mrs. Carter clutched her porch railing, and a kid on a bike nearly fell over. Phones came out, their cameras glinting like a paparazzi. Swarm? This was about to go viral. I leaned out of the hatch, my flannel shirt flapping in the breeze, and locked eyes with Karen. Her neon tracksuit seemed to glow with fear. "You blocked my driveway, Karen," I called, my voice calm but laced with steel. "Now I'm moving your car my way." I dropped back into the cockpit, my hands steady on the controls. The tank's tracks clanked forward, each step a thunderclap. Karen stumbled back, her sunglasses falling to the pavement. "You can't do this," she screamed, waving her arms like a stranded motorist. "I'll sue you. I'll call the cops." Didn't flinch. I knew my rights. Her Lambo was illegally parked on my property line, and my security cameras had it all on tape. The tank inched closer, its shadow swallowing the Lambo's yellow paint. The crowd held its breath, their phones capturing every second. Rusty barked from the porch, cheering me on. I glanced at my phone's screen. The live feed showing Karen's panic in glorious HD. This wasn't just revenge. It was justice, and I was delivering it with 20 tons of steel. The tank's tracks hovered inches from the Lambo's bumper, and I gave Karen one last look. She didn't move. Game on. The air crackled with tension as my tank's tracks inched toward Karen's Lamborghini, each clank a heartbeat in the silent cul-de-sac. Karen's face was a mask of horror, her neon tracksuit glowing against the dull pavement. She threw herself in front of the Lambo, arms flailing like a frantic traffic cop. "Stop. You can't do this," she screamed, her voice shrill enough to shatter glass. "I'll sue you. I'll call the cops. My husband knows the mayor." Her sunglasses dangled from one ear, her ponytail unraveling in the chaos. I leaned out of the tank's hatch, my hand steady on the controls, and gave her one last chance. "Move the car, Karen," I said, my voice calm but iron hard. "You parked it illegally. This is my property." I pointed to the property line where my security cameras blinked, capturing every second. Karen's eyes darted to the cameras, then back to the tank, her bravado crumbling. She knew I had her dead to rights. Her Lambo was blocking my driveway. A clear violation, and her double-pairing stunt had trapped Mrs. Carter's car too. But Karen being Karen, she doubled down. "You're a nobody, Jake," she spat, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "We'll be out of this neighborhood by next week." That was it. Yow. My foot eased the throttle forward, and the tank lurched, its 20 tons of steel groaning with purpose. The crowd gasped. Mr. Henderson gripped his rake. Mrs. Carter clutched her cardigan, and the kid on the bike froze, his phone trembling in his hands. Karen stumbled back, her bravado replaced by raw panic. "No, no, my car," she wailed, but it was too late. The tank's tracks kissed the Lambo's front bumper, and with a deafening crunch, the hood crumpled like tinfoil under a hammer. Metal screamed, headlights popped like champagne corks, and the grille folded into itself. A $300,000 supercar reduced to scrap in seconds. I didn't stop. The tank rolled forward, slow and deliberate, like a predator savoring its kill. Roof caved next, glass shattering in a glittering explosion that sparkled in the morning sun. The crowd erupted first in shocked gasps, then in wild cheers. "Get her, Jake," shouted Tommy, the teenager who mowed my lawn. His phone capturing the chaos, Mrs. Carter clapped, her frail hands trembling with glee, even Rusty barking. From the porch seemed to join the celebration. Karen dropped her phone, its screen cracking on the pavement, and let out a scream that could have woken the dead. "My Lambo, my baby," she sobbed, falling to her knees as the tank's tracks ground the car's frame into a pancake. I eased the tank forward just enough to flatten the front half, then shifted into reverse, the tracks screeching as they backed off the wreckage. The Lambo was unrecognizable, a twisted heap of yellow metal, its once proud curves now a cautionary tale. I cut the engine, the sudden silence deafening, and climbed out of the hatch. My boots hit the ground with a thud, and I dusted my hands, my heart still racing. "Driveway's clear now," I said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. The neighbors exploded into applause, a wave of pent-up relief washing over Willow Creek. Tommy whooped, pumping his fist. That's what you get, Karen." Tira was a mess, tears streaking her mascara, her hands clawing at the pavement as she stared at her ruined car. "You're done, Jake," she choked out, but her voice lacked its usual venom. She scrambled for her phone, fumbling to dial 911, but the neighbors' cheers drowned her out. I stood tall, my flannel shirt soaked with sweat, feeling like a gladiator in an arena. My phone, still recording, had captured every glorious second. The crunch, the cheers, Karen's meltdown. This was more than revenge. It was justice for every fine, every threat, every neighbor she'd bullied. I glanced at the crowd, their phones still rolling, and knew this moment would live forever online. The dust settled, and Willow Creek buzzed with a mix of shock and triumph. Karen knelt beside her flattened Lamborghini, mascara streaking her face like a bad watercolor painting. Her screams had faded to whimpers, her phone cracked and useless. On the pavement, the neighbors, still filming, formed a loose circle around the wreckage, their cheers echoing like a victory chant. I stood by my tank, my flannel shirt damp with sweat, my heart still racing from the adrenaline. Rusty bounded over, tail wagging, and licked my hand as if to say, "You did it, boss." Sirens wailed in the distance, and 2 police cruisers pulled up, their lights flashing. Karen scrambled to her feet, pointing at me like a kid tattling to a teacher. "Arrest him," she shrieked. "He destroyed my car. He's a maniac." The officers, a burly guy named Officer Daniels and a younger woman, Officer Lee, stepped out, eyeing the scene with raised eyebrows. The Lambo was a twisted heap. My tank loomed like a steel giant, and the neighbors' phones were still rolling. This was no ordinary call. I stayed calm, hands in my pockets. "Officers, her car was illegally parked on my property line, blocking my driveway and my neighbors," I said, pointing to Mrs. Carter's trapped sedan. "I have it all on my security cameras." I gestured to the blinking cameras mounted on my garage. Officer Daniels nodded, jotting notes, while Officer Lee walked over to the wreckage, shaking her head. "Ma'am," she said to Karen, "you can't park like that. You're in violation of city code." Karen's jaw dropped. "Violation? He crushed my $300,000 car." Daniels cut her off. "We'll review the footage. Stay put." I led Daniels to my garage where I pulled up the security feed on my laptop. The footage was crystal clear, Karen pulling up at dawn deliberately, parking across my driveway, then double parking to block Mrs. Carter's. It showed her filming me, taunting me, and refusing to move. Daniels watched, his face unreadable, then grunted. "Looks like you warned her multiple times." Back outside, he issued Karen a ticket for illegal parking, her face turning purple as she snatched it. "You're lucky he's not pressing charges for trespassing," Lee added. The tow truck arrived, its driver whistling at the Lambo's remains before hauling the scrap away. Karen was done, and she knew it. The neighbors, emboldened, started sharing their own Karen horror stories. With the cops, her fines, her drones snooping, her dog ban, Daniels listened, his notepad filling up. By the time the officers left, Karen was a shell of her former self, slinking back to her McMansion without a word. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, Rusty, snoring at my feet, and uploaded the tank-crushing video to YouTube. I titled it, "HOA Karen blocked my driveway so I crushed her Lambo," and added a quick intro explaining Karen's tyranny. By morning, it had 2 million views. My inbox exploded with comments. Legend. "Justice served. Can you crush my boss's car next?" Tommy, the lawn mowing kid, commented, "I was there. Jake's a hero." Even Mrs. Carter left a shaky-voiced voicemail thanking me for standing up to Karen. The video spread like wildfire, hitting Reddit, TikTok, and even local news. A reporter called, but I declined. My tank had said enough. The HOA held an emergency meeting a week later, and the neighborhood showed up in force. Mrs. Carter, usually quiet, stood up and proposed a vote to remove Karen as president. The motion passed unanimously, with applause shaking the community center. Karen didn't show rumor what she'd been hiding in her house, her husband furious over the bad press. A month later, a for sale sign appeared in her yard and she moved away, her tail between her legs. Willow Creek felt lighter, like a storm had passed. Neighbors started waving again, kids played in the street, and Mr. Henderson even put up a tacky flamingo lawn ornament, daring the new HOA to complain. As for me, I'm still in my garage, restoring old vehicles. My tank's a local legend, and I've started taking it to car shows where kids climb on it and vets shake my hand. The YouTube channel I launched off that video is blowing up, 50,000 subscribers and counting. I post restoration vlogs, tank, drives, and stories from Willow Creek, each one ending with Rusty stealing the show. The Lambo crush taught me something. Sometimes you gotta roll out the big guns to stand up to a bully. So, what's the moral? Don't mess with a guy who owns a tank. If you loved this story, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell for more crazy tales from my garage. Drop a comment. Have you ever dealt with an HOA, Karen? Let's hear it. Stay tuned. Because Willow Creek's got more drama, and I've got more steel.